Welcome back to the Clay Kane Show on SiriusXM Urban View, Channel 126, where talk empowers and becomes action. All right, looking forward to our next guest. She is an author, an executive coach, and an organizational cultural strategist. She has a book that's out now. It's called Shift, a transformational journey from playing small to unapologetically thriving. Let's bring her on. Dr. Nicole Yeldell Butts. How you doing?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So I want to talk about your book, but I also want to talk about a piece you wrote for Black Enterprise titled
Yes.
Black Women Aren't Leaving the Workforce. They're Rejecting Who It Requires Them to Be. Really,
Yes.
really powerful title. I encourage folks to read it. Tell folks about that article.
So I wrote that article because Black women have reached a point, kind of a collective consciousness around who the workforce has required us to be. And we've been confusing for years survival with success. So we've mastered resilience. We have learned how to overfunction, overperform, endure, but we've been doing all of this at the expense of ourselves. And also in places where we simply don't get the support, we don't have the grace, we don't have room for error. And so Black women have started asking, what if the success that I've been told I'm supposed to be reaching for is costing too much of myself? And that's the question we've been asking, and why you see so many Black women leaving the workforce. And there's really two parts of this. There's the displacement, because so many of us have been displaced by our corporations, by our organizations, but so many of us have also reclaimed our place in the world outside of the workforce. So you're seeing so many Black women starting their own businesses, going out on their own. And it's because we have reached that point of saying, I've been doing all of this work. I've been overperforming, overfunctioning, not getting the support that I need. Why do I continue to abandon myself for this workforce? And so that's what prompted that article.
I want to read a piece from the article you wrote. What once felt like ambition begins to feel like misalignment. What once felt like the achievement begins to feel like maintenance. What once felt like success begins to feel incomplete. This is the part of the story we are missing, because what looks like a departure is often the result of disconcernment. What looks like disengagement is often clarity. What looks like it exists, sorry, the thing is rolling in front of me. What looks like an exit is often a decision. It's Black women saying, I no longer want to succeed at something that requires me to be someone I'm not. And you call it an awakening.
Yes.
What is the time span of this awakening? Is it just the moment that we're in now? Is it decades ago? Is it what's the activation, the trigger of this current awakening, if you will?
So this actually started during COVID. So one of the things that happened during COVID for many people, but particularly for Black women, is that once we were working from home, people began to understand how much of their lives we had given to the workplace and being in the workplace. And stepping away from that, stepping away from the commute, stepping away from the being there for 10 hours a day and not being around your families or being in your own space. Stepping away from that, it was almost like you couldn't put the genie back in the bottle when people started going back into the workplace. And so Black women in particular, leaving what had been a very toxic environment anyway, but not realizing it, right? Because when you're in it, you don't necessarily realize just how toxic it is. You don't realize just how much it's really requiring of you as a human being, what it's doing to your own personal humanity. And so COVID was really the start of this awakening for many women, for many Black women in particular, who said, now I understand the impact that space has had on me, and I simply cannot go back. So that's when it started. It, of course, has continued on in our current administration. We know that over almost 500,000 Black women have been displaced from the workforce since the Trump administration. So that's why I'm saying part of this is displacement, part of it is reclamation. But the time span really goes back to the beginning of COVID for Black women.
You know, it also reminds me a little bit, just thinking of how the history rhymes, how there was a point where black women, because of several civil rights laws, began to move away from being domestic servants. You know, what
Yes.
we then called maids, right?
Hmm.
My grandmother, did that kind of work. But there was a shift in the 1970s where
Yeah.
finally black women are getting more access to education. Women in general are allowed to be in the workforce, right? And but black women specifically, you see that shift even in the South. Not all, obviously, but there's a major shift of first person in your family going to college.
Yeah.
Now, this is getting in the workforce, not becoming business owners or being entrepreneurs in the way that you're talking about. But isn't it interesting how there was a shift from the kind of work that black women were doing, and now it's going even in a different direction? But I see the rhyming there. Do you see that?
I do. And it's really, I'm so glad you brought that up because you're right. That shift took place. And what happened as a result is you have Black women being one of the highest demographics in this country with doctorate degrees, with
Mm.
master's degrees, right? So Black women took that opportunity and ran with it. And again, I mentioned at the top, we have been overfunctioning, overperforming, showing up in remarkable ways in the workforce, yet still invisible, still don't get the support that's needed, still have no room for error, no room for grace, do not get the promotions at the same rate as others, even though we're one of the most highly educated groups in the workforce. And I think seeing that for us is part of this current shift because there's the recognition and the realization that we simply can't do enough to really get to get the recognition and the support in the workforce that we deserve. So that shift that you mentioned led to who we are today. And who we are today is saying, okay, well, this is great, but clearly it's still not enough. It's still not right.
But again, your book is called Shift, a transformational journey from playing small to unapologetically thriving. But the language shift, right? That indicates, a move that you're still trying to figure it out. You're shifting, right? What
Yes,
do you say? There are plenty of folks out there who don't want to start their own business. That's just not their thing. Being an
right.
entrepreneur is a risk. So they are going to have that office job. They might work under
Absolutely.
somebody. What do you say to folks who right now in this space they have to find how to shift within the dynamic that they're in?
Absolutely. And you're right. Most of us aren't going to walk out and start our own businesses. And that's not
Right.
even what I'm recommending that women do. What I am recommending women do is look at their own alignment to make sure that the work that they're
Mm.
doing and the places in which they're doing that work are in alignment with who they are truly. Because one of the things that happens for women, and this is all women, but particularly Black women, is we have to minimize and diminish ourselves in order to be acceptable in the workplace. So, how can you still live within your own truth, maintain your own humanity without, but still being in that in that workplace? And so, the book Shift stands for an acronym. And the acronym is the way you move from playing small to unapologetically thriving in however you choose to work and in however you choose to live. So it's really about saying, I am no longer going to shrink. I am no longer going to abandon myself. I am going to stand firm in who I am and thrive, not just survive, because that's what we've been doing for so long is simply surviving and calling it success because it looked like success on paper, but it did not feel like success internally. So, how do we internalize our success? How do we make it about what's important and meaningful for us, not just what's on paper?
And Dr. Butts, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get into this work? Your personal journey. How did you shift, if you will?
Absolutely. So, I wrote the book after realizing how much I had been shrinking in my own life. And I had shrunk many times, abandoned myself many times. I abandoned myself in the work I was doing. I abandoned myself in the work I wasn't doing. And here's what I mean when I say that. It's interesting. When I started college, and I'm a very proud Howard University alumni, when I started college, I started in broadcast journalism. My freshman year was Frederica Whitfield's senior year. I
Oh,
walked
CNN.
in, I
Yeah.
walked into the television studio feeling very self-assured, right up until the moment I saw Frederica Whitfield behind the camera or in front of the camera.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I thought, ooh, I can't do that. I'm not that good. She was remarkable. That was the first time I shrank, and I changed majors. I changed majors to teaching. And what I realized about 20 years later was that I had been telling myself a cover story for years. The cover story I've been telling myself was, well, I'm just going to do something that is predictable, reliable, safe. Broadcast journalism is none of those things, right? And so I realized that I had been living, even though I was very successful, I had shrunk from who it was I intended to be in this world and the impact I wanted to have in the world. And I think many of us do that. And one of the things I want women to consider is if they ever hear themselves saying, well, I'm just going to, you might be shrinking and not strategizing, because that just is a way to minimize who you are and how you're trying to show up in the world. So when I realized that I had been shrinking and not showing up in the world the way I had intended to, and started talking to other women who had also done the same thing for various reasons. Maybe they shrank in their marriages. Maybe they shrank when they had children. Maybe they shrank because, again, they were checking off all of the boxes that society has told them they're supposed to check off. But the box we failed to check off was the one that said, am I living my truth? And so it was in that realization that I decided to write this book. And the book is based on a framework for moving from that space to moving into a space of thriving. So the S stands for setting your North Star, who is it I want to be in this world. H is where am I now in relation to that. I is how do I illustrate my path forward? How do I close the gap between my North Star and where I am right now? F is forge ahead. Now we start doing the work, because women are really, really good at getting to work because we have to fix something. We got to do something. We got to make this right. So we're really good at getting to the work, but it's often reactive. It's not intentional. It's not purposeful. It's not by design. So that's why F is the fourth step. There's a lot of work we have to do before we actually start taking action, because we can take a lot of action and still be in the same spot. And then T is thrive unapologetically. How do you move from that space of simply surviving the way society has told you you're supposed to survive into your own personal thriving? So that's what the SHIFT framework walks you through.
Well, I love that. Again, the book is called Shift, A Transformational Journey from Playing Small to Unapologetically Thriving by Dr. Nicole Yeldell Butts. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. How can folks follow you and support you and get the book?
So NicoleButts.com. They can follow me there. The book is anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. And also follow me on social media, Dr. Nicole Yeldell Butts on social media.
Great. Appreciate you. Have a good day. Be safe. All right.
Thank you, Clay. You as well. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right, y'all. We are going to we're going to head out. We're going to head out, but it's been a phenomenal show. It's always been a great, great show. Listen, I want to remind y'all, if you want to get a signed copy of Burned Down Master's House, you can get a signed copy from strandbooks.com. That's STRAND books.com, strandbooks.com. Get your signed copy of Burned Down Master's House. It might be too late. I don't know. Maybe it is to get one for Mother's Day, but I mean, pick up that book for Mother's Day. Make it happen, or get it early for Father's Day, or spread the word. Do whatever you can to spread the word. Spread it like fire, y'all. Okay. Oh, I want to remind y'all, I am working on my next book project, and I'm looking to talk to Black folks who at one point or another voted for Donald Trump. So if you know somebody who did, and I want to have the interview not on the radio, different interview, not just, I don't want to do it on air, separate interview. I'm just getting some data and getting some information for my next project. So if you know somebody, or you are one of those people, black man or woman, email claycaneshow@SiriusXM.com, claycaneshow@SiriusXM.com. All right, y'all. You know the deal. Say it with me, Clay Nation. I ain't never really gone.